Time has always been a witness. It watches us raise our children. It listens to the laughter in the hallway and the silence that sometimes follows. Most mothers are the light in that silence, but a few become the reason for it. This is The Most Evil Mothers of All Time, Part 2, Detroit, Michigan, a city built on steel, sweat, and survival. But in a small apartment on St. Aubin Street, the only thing left to survive was silence. Mitchelle Blair was a mother of 4. To her neighbors, she was loud, sometimes friendly, sometimes cruel. Her kids played outside once in a while, but as the years went on, they stopped coming out. The blinds stayed closed, the laughter disappeared. Inside that cramped apartment, the air was heavy with fear. Her children learned early that smiles came with rules. You laughed only when she said you could. You ate only when she allowed it, and you never, ever made her angry. But anger was all she had left. She told people that the world had turned against her, that everyone was trying to take what was hers. And when her oldest son and daughter began to rebel, she decided they were not her children anymore. She said they were demons. She said they needed to be punished. It started small, standing in a corner for hours, no food for a day. Then came the beatings, then the burns, then the kind of cruelty that doesn't make noise but leaves marks that never heal. Mitchelle believed she was both judge and executioner, and her home became her courtroom. Her oldest daughter, Stoney, and her son, Stephen, were her victims. She claimed that they had hurt their younger siblings, but there was no proof, only her word and her rage. She killed Stephen first, a boy of only 9. She wrapped a belt around his neck until his body went still. Then she hid him in a deep freezer, covered in plastic, surrounded by the food her other children ate. Months later, when the guilt turned to paranoia, she turned on Stoney. A girl of just 13, Mitchelle said she was next. She beat her for days, burned her skin, starved her until she couldn't stand. And when Stoney begged for mercy, her mother pressed a black trash bag over her face until she stopped moving. 2 children, both gone, both hidden beneath the hum of an old freezer. For years, the freezer sat in the living room, a normal part of the furniture. Visitors came and went, never suspecting the horror inside. Mitchelle told her surviving kids never to open it, that it held meat. And in a way, it did. The youngest children lived with that secret. They slept beseated, a constant reminder that if they ever disobeyed, they could end up inside too. Days turned into months, months into years. And Mitchelle carried on like nothing had happened. She laughed with neighbors. She complained about bills. She even decorated the apartment for holidays, right beside the freezer. Until one day, everything fell apart. In March of 2015, the police came to her door. They weren't there for murder. They were there to evict her for unpaid rent. As the officers moved through the apartment, they opened the freezer to check for belongings. What they found inside would haunt them forever. 2 small bodies, frozen solid, wrapped carefully in plastic bags. Mitchelle was arrested that same morning. When they questioned her, she didn't deny it. She said she did it on purpose, that she was protecting her other children, that she meant to kill them. Her confession was cold, deliberate, and terrifyingly calm. She described every act as if she were reciting a grocery list. There was no remorse, no sorrow, only justification. In court, she looked the judge in the eye and said she would do it again. Her voice never shook. Her face never changed. When asked if she felt sorry, she said, "For what? They deserved it." The courtroom went silent. Even hardened officers couldn't look at her. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for many who followed the case, the punishment felt meaningless. Because Mitchelle Blair wasn't just a murderer, she was a reminder that evil doesn't always live outside our homes. Sometimes it hides behind the door we trust most. Her surviving children were taken into care, their lives forever marked by the years they spent beside that freezer. They still wake from nightmares that smell like ice and bleach. They still hear her voice when the wind hums through old vents. And that freezer, it became a symbol, a monument to the fragility of love when it's twisted by control, because the same hands that once held those children close were the same hands that took their breath away. Detroit moved on. The building still stands, but behind its thin walls, you can almost hear it. A ghostly hum, the sound of a freezer still running, and the memory of 2 small souls frozen in time. And far away from Detroit, across the ocean, Another mother smiled for the camera. Her children were alive, for now. But soon, her desire for freedom would prove colder than even Mitchelle Blair's frozen silence. Rugby, England. A quiet town of narrow streets and tidy brick homes. The kind of place where everyone smiles politely, and nothing truly terrible is supposed to happen. Louise Porton fit right in, at least on the outside. She was 23, pretty, polite, and always on her phone. A single mother to two little girls, Lexi, who was 3, and Scarlett, who was just 17 months old. Online, she looked perfect. Her photos showed a confident young woman, pouting lips, painted nails, filtered sunlight. She liked attention, compliments, validation. Motherhood didn't fit in that frame. It got in the way of the image she wanted the world to see. Her friends noticed the distance. When her daughters cried, Louise rolled her eyes. When they wanted to play, she scrolled through dating apps instead. She complained that motherhood was boring, that the kids never shut up. In January of 2019, little Lexi fell ill. She struggled to breathe. Louise took her to the hospital, but the doctors couldn't find a cause. They sent them home. Later that night, Lexi stopped breathing again. By the time help arrived, she was gone. A sudden tragedy. A mother holding her daughter's lifeless body. Nurses cried. Doctors comforted her. No one questioned the tears, but there was something off about the way Louise cried. Too dry, too calm, too rehearsed. The next morning, she was back on social media, smiling selfies, flirty messages, a new photo captioned with hearts, as if her daughter hadn't died less than 24 hours earlier. 2 weeks passed, and then it happened again. Scarlett, her youngest, was found unresponsive in the same bed. Louise called for help, but her voice, recorded by the emergency line, was steady, too steady, the kind of calm that only comes from practice. When paramedics arrived, Louise stood by the door, her makeup perfect, her story ready. They couldn't save Scarlett either. Doctors began to suspect. 2 sudden deaths, both under similar circumstances. No illness, no explanation, and one mother whose eyes never seemed to match her words. Police searched her phone. What they found was chilling. Search terms like ways to kill children quietly, how to stop breathing without pain, and how long after drowning does someone die. She had also been sending messages to men, arranging dates, sometimes minutes after her children had taken their last breaths. The motive became painfully clear. Louise wanted freedom. She wanted her life back. She wanted to flirt, to party, to sleep, to exist without responsibility. Her daughters were not victims to her. They were obstacles. In the interrogation room, she kept her composure. She said her girls just stopped breathing. She smiled politely when officers spoke, nodded, even flirted. When shown her internet searches, her expression didn't change. She simply said, "That doesn't mean I did anything." But the evidence spoke louder than she ever could. Traces of blood in their beds, signs of smothering, no struggle, just the slow suffocation of 2 innocent lives by the hands they trusted most. Her trial drew attention across the world. A young, pretty mother, a double murderer, and a heart so empty that even her tears looked rehearsed. Witnesses testified that Louise had laughed when hospital staff asked about Lexi's death. She told them she didn't think it was that serious. Later, she joked about Scarlett being annoying before she died. The jury didn't take long. Guilty, 2 counts of murder, 1 sentence of life. She would spend at least 32 years behind bars before ever being considered for release. When the verdict was read, Louise blinked slowly. No reaction, no apology, just that same blank calm, as if she were listening to a stranger's story, not her own. After her conviction, the judge spoke directly to her. "You are selfish, callous, and cruel. Your children were a burden, and you decided to remove them." But what the judge didn't say out loud was what everyone in that courtroom was already thinking. That Louise Porton represents a different kind of evil. Not the kind born from rage or madness, but the quiet, calculated cruelty of someone who simply doesn't care. Because there's something uniquely horrifying about a mother who kills not out of delusion, but out of convenience. Louise took selfies at the funeral. She smiled at the camera as tiny coffins were lowered into the ground, and maybe, in her mind, she had already moved on. But the world never forgets. And every time a mother posts another perfect photo somewhere, someone remembers Louise Porton. the woman who valued her reflection more than her own children's lives. Her story left Britain in shock, a cold reminder that evil can look beautiful in good lighting. And yet, across the sea, in the sunlit hills of Spain, another woman was smiling too. Not for followers this time, but for love. A stepmother who wanted to belong, who wanted the man but not the child that came with him. And soon, her jealousy would sink deeper than the light itself. Almeria, Spain, a bright coastal town kissed by the Mediterranean sun. White houses, warm air, and streets that smell of salt and oranges. It is the kind of place where tragedy feels impossible. And yet, beneath that blue sky, a single act of jealousy would drown an entire family in darkness. Her name was Ana Julia Quezada. Born in the Dominican Republic, she came to Spain in search of a better life. She met a man, 52-year-old Ángel Cruz, a kind father raising his 8-year-old son, Gabriel. They fell in love. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. Ana Julia smiled often. She was charming, sociable, the kind of woman who filled a room with confidence. But behind that smile lived something cold, a growing resentment. She wanted Angel's love, his home, his life, but she did not want the part of it that reminded him of another woman, his child. Gabriel adored his father. He was small, energetic, curious, a boy who loved drawing fish and dreamed of becoming a marine biologist. He had the innocence of someone who had never seen real cruelty. And to Ana Julia, that innocence became unbearable. She saw the bond between father and son as a threat. Every laugh they shared, every hug that didn't include her, fed her jealousy until it became something sharp. On a February afternoon in 2018, she volunteered to pick Gabriel up from a family visit. She told everyone she'd drop him off at home. He never arrived. Within hours, the town mobilized. Hundreds of volunteers searched the countryside. Posters of Gabriel's face covered walls and lampposts. The entire nation watched as his father, devastated, begged for help on live television. And beside him, always at his side, stood Ana Julia, crying, hugging, whispering words of comfort, the perfect stepmother. For 13 days, she played the role flawlessly. She organized search parties. She wore Gabriel's picture on her shirt. She told reporters she wouldn't rest until he was found. Her performance was so convincing that even the police believed her, but Ana Julia had made one mistake. She couldn't stop visiting the scene of the crime. Detectives noticed her car near an abandoned farm, a remote property belonging to Angel's family. Hidden under a pile of dirt, they found something soft, a blanket, and inside it, the body of little Gabriel Cruz. He had been suffocated, buried by the woman who claimed to love his father. When police confronted her, Ana Julia broke down, screaming, sobbing, insisting it was an accident. She said Gabriel made her angry. She said she just wanted him to stop talking, but the evidence told another story. The forensic report showed deliberate force, no hesitation, no struggle, just cold, steady pressure until the child stopped breathing. The nation of Spain froze. How could someone stand beside a grieving father for nearly 2 weeks knowing she was the reason for his tears? When Ana Julia confessed, she admitted she had returned to the burial site several times to make sure the body was still hidden. Each visit, she sprinkled leaves and sand, covering the truth again and again, until the police uncovered it for good. Her arrest was broadcast live. Cameras flashed as she was led away, her hands cuffed, her head bowed. But even then, she played the victim, telling reporters she was tired of being hated. At trial, she showed no emotion. The jury saw the footage of her crying on television, standing beside the boy's father, knowing exactly what she had done. And as those images played, the courtroom went still. A collective realization that the face of evil can cry on command. She was sentenced to life imprisonment, the harshest penalty under Spanish law. When the verdict was read, Ángel Cruz wept quietly. He said no sentence could bring back his son, but justice at least had spoken. Outside the courthouse, the sky was as bright as ever. Tourists walked by, unaware of what had just unfolded inside. And maybe that's the cruelest part. How life goes on, how the sun keeps shining even after the darkest acts imaginable. Ana Julia Quezada will likely die behind bars. And yet, her story still lingers. Not because of the murder alone, but because of the performance that followed. Because for 13 days, she stood before cameras, crying for the child she had killed, comforting the man whose heart she had already destroyed. Evil doesn't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it looks us in the eyes, takes our hand, and promises to help us find what it has already taken. In the end, Anna Julia's mask slipped, and behind it, the world saw jealousy stripped bare. Not rage, not insanity, just the small, poisonous kind of envy that turns love into possession and tenderness into death. And while Spain mourned its lost child, across the ocean, another mother was crafting her own reality, not out of jealousy, but out of prophecy. She believed she was chosen, that her children were no longer human, that their souls had been replaced by darkness. And in her devotion to that twisted faith, Lori Vallow Daybell would bring about one of the most haunting stories America had ever seen.
Lori, right in prison. We can't do that. Let's go. Everyone out now.
Rexburg, Idaho. A quiet town of snow-covered streets and wooden fences. The kind of place where faith runs deep, and neighbors still smile at strangers. Lori Vallow moved there with her children, 17-year-old Ty Lee and 7-year-old JJ. To those who met her, she seemed radiant, beautiful, confident, charming, a mother with a soft voice and a bright smile. But behind that smile, something else had begun to grow. A belief that she was chosen, that she was a warrior of light in a world consumed by darkness. Lori was deeply religious, but over time, her faith had twisted into something unrecognizable. She began following a fringe preacher named Chad Daybell, a doomsday author who claimed he could see beyond the veil of life and death. Together, they built a theology of their own, a mix of prophecy, apocalypse, and self-importance. They spoke of light and dark spirits, of people whose souls had been replaced. And soon, Lori began to believe that her own children had become possessed, that they were no longer really there. To outsiders, it sounded insane, but to Lori, it was divine truth. Friends began to notice the change. Her laughter became forced, her words cryptic. She stopped mentioning her children in the present tense, and when asked where they were, she would smile and say, "They're safe, you'll see them again soon." But no one did. Tylee and JJ vanished in September of 2019. Family members grew desperate. They called, they visited, they begged Lori to tell them where the children were. She refused. She said they were in a safe place. She said no one would understand. At the same time, Chad Daybell's own wife, Tammy, died suddenly in her sleep. No autopsy, no questions. Just another quiet burial in small-town Idaho. Weeks later, Lori and Chad were seen vacationing in Hawaii, smiling, relaxed, newly married, two souls reborn in their own delusion. But back in Idaho, police had begun to unravel the truth. When they searched Lori's home, the children were nowhere to be found. When they checked schools and hospitals, there was no trace of them at all. And when Lori was ordered to produce her children in court, she simply didn't show up. The nation watched the case unfold in horror. A mother claiming to be divine, a preacher claiming to speak for God, and two missing children lost somewhere between faith and madness. Months passed. Then, on a June morning in 2020, detectives searched Chad Daybell's property. The ground was uneven. The air was heavy with decay. They dug near a small fire pit and found what they were looking for: the remains of both children, buried separately, carefully hidden beneath the soil. Tylee had been dismembered. JJ was still wearing his red pajamas. The images that followed broke the world's heart. A mother who believed her children were zombies. A husband who believed the end of times had already begun. And two innocent souls who never had a chance. When Lori was arrested, she smiled for the camera. Her mugshot became iconic. The calm, almost peaceful face of a woman who believed she had done nothing wrong. In court, she insisted she was guided by God, that her children were happy now, that they were in a better place. Her words were cold, her tone unwavering. Even when the judge read her sentence, life in prison without parole, Lori looked serene, as if she had fulfilled her divine mission. Her story became a mirror of something deeper, how belief, when corrupted, can destroy the very things it was meant to protect. Because Lori didn't kill for anger, or money, or revenge, she killed for conviction. And conviction, when it becomes absolute, is indistinguishable from madness. The tragedy of Lori Vallow Daybell is not just the loss of 2 children, but the power of belief to turn compassion into cruelty. Her words still echo through court transcripts, the soft-spoken certainty of a mother who believed she was saving her children by ending their lives. In the end, she was not a prophet, not a saint, not chosen. Just another parent who mistook her own voice for God's. And while her story faded from headlines, another mother, far away, was whispering her own version of prophecy, not one born from scripture, but from fear. A mother who convinced herself that the world was ending, that evil had infected her family, and that the only way to save them was to destroy them. This time, she wouldn't act alone. Her daughter would help her, hand in hand, mother and child, praying over the bodies of their own blood. This is where belief and madness meet. This is the story of Shana Decree, a quiet apartment complex just outside Philadelphia. Small buildings lined in neat rows, a place where life was simple, predictable, safe. At least, that's what everyone thought. Behind one door on West Bridge Street, a family lived together, a grandmother, her daughters, and several young children. They were close, too close. Always together, always praying, always talking about the end of the world. At the center of it all was Shana Decree, a mother in her 40s, deeply religious, deeply paranoid. Her daughter, Dominique, still lived with her. And together they spent more and more time in isolation, blinds closed, phones off, drawing deeper into a strange faith of their own making. They spoke of spirits and signs, of demons hiding in their bloodline. They said the world outside was poisoned, and only those who truly believed would survive. It started as whispers, but soon became obsession. They convinced themselves that their family had been infected, that those living under their roof were no longer human, that the only way to save their souls was to free them from their bodies. On a cold February night in 2019, their prayers turned into ritual. No one outside heard the screams, no one saw the struggle. But when it was over, 5 members of their family were dead. 2 young children, 3 adults, each suffocated, each laid out side by side, their hands folded, their faces calm. When police arrived, the apartment was eerily quiet. The television was still on, but the air inside felt thick, like the room itself was holding its breath. Officers found Shana and Dominique in a daze, sitting together on the bed. Their voices were low, their words slow, as if they were reciting a prayer. Shana said, "They're all with God now. We had to do it. They were possessed." She claimed it wasn't murder, it was deliverance. Her daughter nodded, repeating the same phrases. The police tried to make sense of it, but there was no sense to be found. Every explanation dissolved into scripture, every question answered with a hymn. The confession that followed was both terrifying and heartbreaking. They said they had planned it together, that God had spoken to them, that they were cleansing their home. Shana claimed she loved her family deeply, that each act was done with mercy. She said the world was ending, and she couldn't let her loved ones face what was coming. But what came instead was the cold reality of what she had done. In court, Shana sat quietly beside her daughter, their hands clasped together, still united, still convinced they had done the right thing. Prosecutors described the scene in chilling detail, how one by one they pressed the air from their victims' lungs while whispering prayers, how one of the children, terrified, tried to escape, but was pulled back by the people she trusted most. There were tears in the courtroom. Even hardened detectives looked away. The jury didn't take long. Shana and Dominique were both found guilty of 5 counts of murder, each sentenced to life in prison, no chance of release. Yet even behind bars, their conviction never faded. In interviews, Shana said she felt at peace, that she had obeyed the will of God, that her family was in heaven, waiting. It is one of the most unsettling truths about human belief, that faith and delusion can wear the same face. When belief becomes absolute, it leaves no room for reason, no room for doubt, no room for mercy. Shana Decree believed she was saving her family, but in her quest for salvation, she became their executioner. And Dominique, a daughter raised to obey, followed her mother straight into madness. Their story is a portrait of control disguised as devotion, a reminder that even the language of love can be twisted into justification. When asked if she regretted what she had done, Shana only smiled. She said, "I'll see them again soon. 5 lives, ended by 2 hands joined in prayer. 2 generations bound together, mother and daughter, killer and disciple. The apartment was emptied, the walls scrubbed, the carpets replaced, but no one moved in for months. Neighbors said the building felt cold, like something sacred had been violated there, and something evil left behind. Faith can save, but faith can also consume. It can make saints, and it can make monsters. And far away, under a different roof, another young mother sat alone with her children, tired, desperate, and whispering lullabies to keep them calm. But her lullabies would soon become eulogies, because where Shana killed for salvation, Rachel Henry would kill for silence. Phoenix, Arizona. A city of desert heat, long roads, and quiet nights. The kind of place where you can hear the hum of an air conditioner through the walls of every small apartment. In one of those apartments lived a young mother named Rachel Henry. She was 22, soft-spoken, polite, the kind of woman who smiled too easily, as if she was always trying to convince herself that everything was fine. She had come from Oklahoma with her boyfriend and 3 small children, 2 girls and 1 boy, all under the age of 4. Neighbors would sometimes see her outside, holding a baby on her hip, another tugging at her sleeve, and a third crying somewhere behind her. She looked tired, but then again, all young mothers look tired. No one imagined what that exhaustion would become. Rachel struggled. She was unemployed, isolated, and often overwhelmed. Her family said she had a gentle heart, but they also said she was fragile, easily lost in her thoughts. When stress came, she shut down. When the children cried, she froze. And when the silence finally came, she never wanted it to end. On a January evening in 2020, Rachel was at home with her children and 2 other adults. There was music playing, the smell of cheap takeout in the air, and the soft sound of little feet running on carpet. It was the sound of life, the sound she would soon erase. No one knows what triggered it, maybe exhaustion, maybe something darker. But that night, something inside Rachel Henry broke. She waited until the others in the apartment were distracted. Then she took her oldest daughter into a bedroom. Neighbors would later remember hearing faint crying, but thought nothing of it. Inside that room, Rachel pressed her hand over the child's mouth and nose, singing softly while she held her down. The little girl kicked, clawed, then went still. When she returned to the living room, she told the others the child was sleeping. Then she took her second daughter into the same room, and again. Same quiet lullaby, the same stillness after. Her son was last, just 7 months old. She cradled him gently, rocking him back and forth as his tiny hands reached for her face. She whispered something to him. No one will ever know what. And then she smothered him too. 3 children, 3 small lives, ended by the same hands that once fed and comforted them. Hours passed before anyone realized what she had done. When police arrived, Rachel was sitting on the floor, humming softly, rocking back and forth. The bodies of her children lay neatly side by side, as if waiting to be tucked into bed. When officers asked her why, she said she didn't know, that something took over, that she had lost control. Her words were empty, her tone calm, almost relieved. She described each death in detail, as if she were describing a dream, a terrible, endless dream she couldn't wake from. In her confession, she said she had been singing to them as she killed them. A lullaby, a song meant to soothe, turned into a requiem. The detectives who interviewed her later said her voice never broke, not once. She was detached, almost peaceful, as though she believed what she had done was not real. Rachel Henry was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Her trial drew little attention. No headlines, no crowds, just another quiet tragedy in a world already drowning in them. In court, she sat motionless, her hair covering part of her face. She said she didn't want to speak. When asked if she had anything to say to the families, she whispered, "I miss them." And that was all. Her story is one of silence. Not the silence of guilt, but the silence of absence. The hollow quiet that follows when everything you love is gone, and you were the one who took it away. Because sometimes evil isn't loud. Sometimes it's soft, tired, and broken. Rachel wasn't a monster in the traditional sense. She didn't hate her children. She just couldn't stand the noise of their needs, the weight of their innocence. And so she chose peace, her peace, over their lives. When she was led from the courtroom, she smiled faintly, as if she finally had what she always wanted, quiet. Her name faded quickly from the news, buried beneath other horrors, other mothers. But her story lingers like a whisper in the dark, a reminder that exhaustion, when mixed with despair, can become something deadly. And somewhere else, another mother was about to prove that exhaustion isn't the only mask evil wears. In Colorado Springs, a stepmother smiled for photos, laughed with friends, and told everyone how much she adored her stepson. But when that boy disappeared, her story began to unravel, one lie at a time. Her name was Letecia Stauch, and the mask she wore would soon crack wide open. Colorado Springs, snow on the rooftops, mountains in the distance, and behind one of those quiet suburban doors, a woman rehearsed her smile in the mirror. Letecia Stauch called herself a perfect stepmom. She told friends she loved her stepson Gannon as if he were her own. She posted pictures of them together, him grinning shyly, her hand on his shoulder, a family portrait built on pretense. But photos can lie, and Letecia was about to prove that even the warmest smile can hide something cold. Gannon was 11, a shy boy, soft-spoken, the kind of child who said sorry even when he hadn't done anything wrong. He loved video games, science projects, and his dog more than anything in the world. In January of 2020, he vanished. Letecia told police that he had run away, that he'd gone to a friend's house and never returned, but her story shifted almost immediately. She said someone had taken him. Then she said he had been injured and wandered off. Then she stopped talking altogether. The lies came faster than the snow, each one melting into another, each one colder than the last. Investigators began to look closer. There was blood on the walls of Gannon's bedroom, and in the garage, and in her car. A trail of evidence that told a story Letecia refused to admit. As the search stretched into weeks, she gave interviews, crying on camera, pleading for her stepson's safe return. Her words sounded practiced, her tears came on cue, and every time the cameras stopped rolling, the performance ended. Her husband Al believed her at first. He wanted to, he had to. But soon, even he began to see the cracks. Detectives followed her travel records, her text messages, her GPS history. What they found was chilling. Letecia had driven over 900 miles in the days after Gannon disappeared, from Colorado to Florida, stopping in remote locations along the way. When police finally searched one of those sites, they found a suitcase. Inside was the body of 11-year-old Gannon Stauch. He had been beaten, stabbed and shot, then hidden, discarded like a secret she thought would never be found. When confronted with the evidence, Letecia changed her story again. She said she didn't remember. She said voices in her head had done it. She blamed an alternate personality she called Taylor. The courtroom watched as her lies unfolded like a script she couldn't stop rewriting.
How to get blood out of sheets.
Out of sheets?
Mm-hmm. I want immunity.
Oh, the blood out of sheets was because we always had always nosebleeds. If I ever looked at blood out of sheets, it was nosebleeds.
And I figured it might be something.
I didn't ever look up anything about an artery or something unless it went from.
Each version, stranger than the last. Each one another desperate attempt to escape the truth. The jury saw through it. They saw the web of manipulation, the cold precision of her planning, the way she had studied police reports online and adjusted her story accordingly. They saw how she had cleaned the crime scene, moved the body, and smiled for cameras while knowing exactly where Gannon was. Her guilt was undeniable. When the verdict was read, Letecia sat still. No tears, no words, just that same expression. The mask she'd worn since the beginning. Life in prison, no chance of parole, a sentence that meant she would die behind walls as cold as the lies she told. But her story isn't just about cruelty. It's about control, about the hunger for power over someone smaller, so fragile, so trusting. She wanted to win every argument, to be the center of her husband's world, to eliminate anything that challenged that, even if that meant eliminating a child. Letecia Stauch was not insane. She was not possessed. She was calculated, deliberate, patient. She planned Gannon's death with the same care most people plan a vacation. And that may be the most terrifying truth of all, that evil doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it organizes, it plans, it packs a suitcase. The home where Gannon once lived is still there. Fresh paint, new family, no trace of the past. At least not one you can see. But the neighbors remember. They remember the search parties, the flashing lights, the snow melting under the weight of police boots. They remember the silence that followed, a silence so heavy it felt alive. And while that silence spread through Colorado, another one was taking hold half a world away. In the quiet suburbs of Timaru, New Zealand, a mother and doctor named Lauren Dickason was fighting a different kind of battle, one that wasn't against a child, but against herself. She wasn't a killer born from hatred, but from despair. And her story would raise a question that still divides the world today. When does mental illness stop being an explanation and start becoming an excuse? Timaru, New Zealand. A quiet coastal town framed by ocean mist and narrow streets that fall asleep after dark. In one of those streets stood a neat white house, a rental for a family who had just arrived from South Africa. To the neighbors, they looked perfect. Graham and Lauren Dickason, both doctors, both polite, both tired from the long move, and their 3 daughters, 6-year-old Leonie and 2-year-old twins Maya and Carla. They smiled shyly behind their father's legs the day they moved in. No one could have known they would never leave that house alive. Lauren had always dreamed of being a mother. Photos from years before show her holding the twins in matching pink onesies, her eyes bright, her arms full of love. But love can dim, and under the pressure of a new country, new job, and new isolation, something inside her began to unravel. The walls of that tidy home closed in. The laughter of 3 little girls turned into a constant reminder of everything she thought she was failing at. Postpartum depression is a quiet predator. It creeps slowly. It whispers that your family would be better off without you, and when despair grows deep enough, it starts to sound like logic. Lauren's journals later revealed a haunting truth. She felt worthless. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't smile. And every morning, when she saw her daughters' faces, she felt a wave of guilt for not being able to love them the way she used to. On the night of September the 16th, 2021, her husband Graham was out at a work dinner. Lauren was home alone with the girls. The evening was quiet. Dinner plates still on the counter, cartoons playing softly in the background. At some point, something inside her gave way. The darkness she had been holding back finally swallowed her whole. Police records show what happened next. Lauren took each of her daughters to their bedroom. She sang to them. She told them she loved them. And then she ended their lives, one after another, believing, in her broken logic, that she was saving them from the pain she felt. When Graham came home that night, the lights were still on. He walked down the hallway calling their names. And then he saw them. 3 small bodies, tucked neatly under blankets, and Lauren sitting beside them, dazed, whispering prayers. Her words were soft, almost inaudible. "They're safe now," she said. "They're with Jesus." The silence that followed was absolute. Police arrived minutes later. Lauren did not resist. She told them she had lost her mind. She said she didn't remember everything, only that the voices in her head had told her it was the right thing to do. Her confession was a collision of sorrow and insanity. Not defiance, not denial, just emptiness. The case divided New Zealand. Was she a monster, or a mother undone by sickness? Could grief excuse murder, even when the illness was real? In the courtroom, the jury listened to psychiatrists describe her depression in clinical detail. They spoke of chemical imbalance, of psychosis, of despair so deep it feels eternal. And then the prosecution reminded everyone that 3 children were still gone, 3 lives taken by the one person meant to protect them. Lauren cried when the photos of her daughters were shown. She sobbed until she couldn't breathe. But tears, no matter how real, could never undo what she had done. When the verdict came, the jury found her guilty of murder. The judge's voice was heavy with pity, not anger. He said it was a tragedy born of illness, but illness does not erase consequence. Lauren was sentenced to life in prison, with no minimum term set. Even behind bars, she remains haunted. Doctors say she still asks for her girls, still believes they are waiting for her, somewhere safe. And perhaps that's the saddest truth. That a mother who once prayed for her daughter's safety became the very danger she feared. The case of Lauren Dickason is not one of hatred. It is one of despair. Proof that sometimes the line between victim and villain is drawn not in blood, but in the mind. Because the human heart can break in ways that logic will never understand. And yet, even among stories of madness and grief, there are some acts that defy both. Crimes where no illness, no desperation, can ever explain what was done. Far from the quiet coast of New Zealand, in the heart of Missouri, another mother was about to face her own demons. but she wouldn't weep. She wouldn't plead for forgiveness. She would look directly into the darkness and name it her own. Her name was Tasha Haefs, and what police found inside her home would scar even the most seasoned officers for life. Kansas City, Missouri. A neighborhood of modest houses and cracked sidewalks. The kind of street where kids ride bikes in summer and everyone minds their own business. But on one winter night, the silence of that street would be shattered by something no one could ever forget. The call came in just after 10 p.m. A woman's voice, frantic but distant, muffled screams in the background. Then, nothing, just static. Officers were dispatched to a small home on Benton Boulevard. When they arrived, the front door was locked. The lights were on. No sound came from inside. And then they heard it, a faint humming, a voice singing softly to itself. They forced the door open. What they found stopped them in their tracks. Blood on the walls, footprints smeared across the floor. And in the middle of the kitchen, a woman sitting calmly in a chair, her hands covered in red, her eyes blank. Her name was Tasha Haefs. She was 35 years old, a mother of two. One of them, a 6-year-old boy, was still inside the house. What the officers saw next would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Tasha had decapitated her son. The boy's small body was found nearby, his head placed carefully beside him, as if she had been trying to make sense of what she'd done. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence that she had been attacked, only her own words, murmured over and over again. The devil was inside him. I had to save him. Police tried to calm her. She was bleeding from small cuts on her hands, but otherwise unharmed. When asked why she had done it, she looked up slowly and said, "He was possessed. I had to stop the evil before it spread." Her voice was almost gentle, the voice of a mother explaining something ordinary, something necessary. Officers said later that the calm in that room was worse than the violence. It felt rehearsed, like she had been preparing for this moment all along. Neighbors told reporters they had heard arguing earlier that evening. Not shouting, but chanting. They thought it was prayer. They thought she was trying to drive something out. They had no idea what was really happening inside. As detectives pieced the night together, a portrait of unraveling insanity began to form. Tasha had been hearing voices for days. She told friends that the devil was trying to take her child. She said she could hear demons whispering through the vents. And on that night, she decided to fight back. But what she called deliverance was nothing more than destruction. In her confession, she spoke with a kind of serene detachment. She said she had saved his soul. She said she had no choice. She smiled when she said it. The prosecutor called her crime pure evil, but the defense argued mental illness, a mind consumed by paranoia and psychosis. A mother who truly believed she was protecting her child from eternal suffering. The court would later rule her incompetent to stand trial. She was sent to a psychiatric hospital where she remains today. A patient, not a prisoner. But labels don't change what happened. They don't erase the image of that house, the blood, the quiet song still echoing in the air. And that song. It was the same melody officers had heard when they arrived. Tasha had been singing a hymn, a lullaby twisted into something unrecognizable. She was still singing when they took her away. There is no way to understand an act like that. No way to measure the distance between love and madness. Because every mother believes she's protecting her child, until the mind convinces her that protection means death. The house on Benton Boulevard has since been demolished. Grass grows where the kitchen once stood, but for those who were there that night, the memory never left. The sound of her voice, soft and steady, as if she were putting her son to sleep. The case of Tasha Haefs stands at the edge of comprehension, where mental illness and evil intertwine, and no one can say where one ends and the other begins. And yet, as disturbing as her story is, there was still another to come, a final act in this descent through darkness. Because not all mothers kill out of delusion or despair. Some do it for reasons no one can name. No voices, no prophecies, just a single, irreversible decision. In Kentucky, a woman sat alone in her car one November morning, staring at the quiet house she once called home. Inside, her 2 young sons were still asleep. By the time the sun rose, they would never wake again. Her name was Tiffanie Lucas, Kentucky. A quiet town, the kind where the mornings come slow and the air smells of rain on concrete. On a November day in 2023, the sky was gray, a flat, heavy gray that pressed down on the rooftops and filled the streets with silence. Inside a small house at the end of a cul-de-sac, two little boys were asleep in their beds. Their names were Clayton and Hunter. Brothers, best friends, each still small enough to believe that the world was safe when their mother was near. Their mother's name was Tiffanie Lucas, 32 years old. To those who knew her, she was quiet, shy, sometimes kind, sometimes distant. She had struggled for years with depression, with loneliness, with the slow erosion of hope. And in those final days, her mind began to turn against her. She told neighbors that people were watching her, that something evil had entered her home. She said she heard voices, not loud, but constant, whispering through the walls, telling her that the world was ending, and that the only way to keep her boys safe was to take them with her. On the morning of the 8th of November, she sat alone in her car, hands trembling on the steering wheel. For nearly half an hour, she didn't move. Then she got out, walked back into the house, and made a choice that would end everything. 2 gunshots, 2 small bodies, and a silence that would never leave that home. When police arrived, Tiffanie was sitting on the front porch. Her hands were empty, her eyes blank. She told the officers she was sorry, but she said it like a question, as if she didn't know what the word meant anymore. Inside, they found the boys still in their beds, the blankets pulled up to their shoulders, their faces peaceful, like they were still dreaming. The investigators said it was one of the quietest crime scenes they had ever walked into. No chaos, no struggle, just stillness, and a mother who had convinced herself that death was protection. When questioned, Tiffanie said she thought someone was coming to hurt them, that she wanted to keep them safe. Her voice cracked when she said it, as if part of her finally understood what she had done. The prosecutors called it murder, the defense called it madness, but whatever name they gave it, the result was the same. 2 children gone, a mother forever haunted by her own hands. The court ordered a psychological evaluation. Doctors spoke of paranoia, of delusions, of the deep and tangled roots of untreated illness. They said she wasn't evil, just broken beyond repair. But in the end, does the reason ever matter? Does the shape of madness change the weight of loss? Because 2 boys are still dead, their laughter still gone. And a mother's mind, no matter how fractured, was still the instrument that took them. Tiffany's story doesn't come with answers. It only leaves questions, the kind that echo long after the cameras are gone. How does love become lethal? How does protection turn to destruction? And why does it happen again and again? Across continents and decades, the faces change, but the silence after remains the same. Mitchelle Blair, Louise Porton, Julia Quezada, Vallow, Daybell, Shana Decree, Rachel Henry, Letecia Stauch, Dickason, Tasha Haefs, and now Tiffanie Lucas. 10 mothers, 10 stories, 10 moments where something inside them shattered and the world paid the price. They are not connected by faith or money or hatred, only by the terrible truth that love, when twisted, can become the most dangerous thing in the world. Because no one fears a stranger the way they fear betrayal from someone they trust. No one imagines danger in the arms that once rocked them to sleep. These stories are not about evil alone. They are about fragility, about how thin the line truly is between care and control, between protection and possession. In every one of these homes, there was once laughter. There were drawings on the fridge, tiny shoes by the door, songs sung before bed. And in each one, there came a night when that love was no longer enough to stop the darkness. Evil does not always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like jealousy. Sometimes it looks like faith. And sometimes it looks like love itself. The faces of these women remind us that danger does not always come with warning signs. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it prays. Sometimes it kisses a forehead goodnight and means it. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. That every one of them once believed they were doing the right thing. They weren't. But belief is powerful. It can turn saints into killers and mothers into ghosts. Tonight, as you hear these names, remember the children, their laughter, their light. Because in the end, the story was never really about their mothers. It was about them, the ones who never had a choice. And if there's a lesson buried in all this darkness, it's this. That love without empathy becomes control, and control without conscience becomes evil. The most frightening monsters don't live under our beds. They tuck us in. They smile at us. They whisper that everything will be okay. And sometimes, we believe them. If you're still here, listening through the dark, thank you. Remember to stay curious, but never forget the weight of the stories we tell. They are real, they happened, and the only way to keep their voices from fading is to remember them. So, if you want to walk with me again through the quiet corners of human darkness, subscribe, turn on the light, and let it stay on. Just a little longer tonight, because the next story might be closer than you think.